19mm socket, remove all 4 of your lug nuts, and then take the wheel off. Next, we need to take this drum off. Sometimes it's stuck on there, in which case you can use a hammer and just hammer it on the surface here. That'll hopefully break it free. It's most likely stuck on this inner ring here. But thankfully it's not for me, so I can just slide it off and wiggle it. Next, before I do any more work, I want to take off all of this brake dust that has accumulated here. And I'm going to use brake parts cleaner. Just give it a good rinse. That way I don't breathe in any of this dust as I'm working. Before we move further with a brake job, typically what I would do at this point is clean up the hub surface. This one isn't too bad, so a wire brush might do it. Or you could use a sanding disc like this. Just don't dig in too far. You just want to remove the surface rust or the buildup of rust that is on top. That way the new drum can sit nice and flush onto the surface, not at a weird angle. In the next clip, you'll actually see a new hub because I am replacing this one. But just like I said before, you can sand it down. Obviously, you don't have to replace the hub with brakes. And at this point, I would consider this clean. Just take a wire brush in the middle of the studs, between the studs and the hub center, and clean that up. But this is what I meant by sanding it down. Just a light scuff so the surface is nice and clean. When disassembling these drum brakes, I'm going to start with this small spring here for the adjuster. There we go. Take this off and set it aside. Now, all of this hardware that we're about to take out, you can definitely reuse if it's in good condition. I have new hardware, but again, you can totally reuse the old one as long as it's in good condition, which all of this is. But I'll show you how to replace it all. And now with the spring here removed, you can see the adjuster wheel in there. And I'm actually going to de-adjust the brakes. That'll squeeze the top spring in back together and make it easier for me to remove it. So I'll just twist this adjuster wheel until it's completely bottomed out. It's bottomed out right there. The spring has more, well, not slack, but it's easier to spread apart now in order to remove it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab it with some locking pliers. Grab onto it nice and tight, pull it away, and unhook it. There we go. You have to kind of, force it. At this point, you can remove the adjuster and the little arm that adjusts it. Now on each side, you'll have these locking clips here. To remove those, you have to press in and then turn the clip while you hold the pin from the back side. Just like that. Take the pin out. Do the same to this side over here. And take the pin out. There's going to be a spring at the bottom. Remove that. Then you can pull the other shoe off. And this one will still be attached because this is what attaches the parking brake cable to your e-brake shoes. Just pull the cable out a little bit. And in order to disconnect it, pull the spring back and just simply unhook it. There you have it. Now I'm just going to give this another rinse with brake parts cleaner to get rid of all this brake dust at the back here. Now we have to take off this arm for the parking brake and transfer it over to the new shoe. To do that, you have to spread this little C-clip here. And sometimes it's easiest to do it with a screwdriver to begin with. I'm going to try and hold this steady so it stops spinning. That way I can open it up like this. Once you open it enough, you can take pliers and squeeze it out. Once you get to about here, hopefully you can stick a screwdriver behind it, pry it out like this. Okay, there it is. There's a little spring washer in here. Well, what's left of it. It's supposed to be more curved than that. And then you can take the arm out and this pin comes out as well. So now you want to take your new shoe, make sure it's facing the right direction, and then slide this pin through. I like to put a little bit of grease on here. That's where the arm pivots, and if it's lubricated, it's less likely to grind into the pad or the shoe. Then you can take the arm, slide this over like this. Then I'm going to take this spring washer, slide that over, and then a brand new C-clip. It's a good idea to use a new one. To lock this in, just squeeze it. At this point, with the backing plate clean and everything ready to install, I'm going to put some grease on the pivot points of the shoes. So a point here, one down below. I like to also put a little bit of grease right here where it hooks on to the brake or the wheel cylinder. And then of course you do the same to the other side. You don't need a lot. You don't want it to start flinging onto the drum or the shoes, but just enough to coat it to prevent rust and to minimize noise. I'll also put some on the bottom where the shoes hook on. Now you can take the shoe, pull the spring back on the parking brake cable, and hook the parking brake cable onto the shoe. Just like that. Bring it up here. Make sure the cable is routed in its proper location. Bring the shoe up into position. Slide the pin through. Put the locking clip in here. Squeeze it. There we go. Okay. Okay. So this one's locked in. Now on the bottom, let's attach the two shoes with the spring. Let's put the pin through on this side as well to lock in this one. Before we put the adjuster in, I'm going to clean it up because it looks kind of gross, and I know it's going to get dirty again, but the point of this is also so that we can lubricate it inside on the threads. It's important to lubricate it, otherwise it has the potential of seizing up. So I'm going to take this apart completely. It comes off in 3 different pieces. I'm going to clean the threads, I'm going to clean the junk on the outside, I'll show you how to lubricate it, and then we'll put it back together and install it. I have it all cleaned up in the wire wheel. I'm going to take a little bit of brake grease and add it to the threads here. You can use silicone paste if you don't have brake grease. Not a lot, just a little bit. And then go ahead and thread it back on all the way to work that grease in. It'll also be easiest to install everything if this is completely in and bottomed out. Put a little bit of grease on the side without threads. Work that in there and just wipe off the excess. And now you have to remember which way it went. The wider fork went on the rear shoe that had the e-brake lever, and the narrower fork went on the front side. Also, you can remember because the adjuster wheel was towards the front side, this is where that little arm goes. So put that on the front. So I'm going to take this adjuster on this rearward shoe. The longer part of the fork goes towards you. So make sure that is set into place. Compress the shoes to double check that everything is positioned correctly. And everything is. There's also this little adjuster arm that sits in just like so. And that has a spring here. And before I put the spring in for the adjuster arm, I'm going to go ahead and put the top spring in. And no, it did not go into this hole. It went all the way over there. So this won't be easy, but it will be doable. I'm going to grab some locking pliers and lock them on nice and tight. All right, so it's in halfway. I'm just going to tap it into its hole. There we go. And now to put the spring in for the adjuster arm, just hook it onto right here. And then if you go down, it's supposed to go right into that hole over there. This spring is on the weaker side, especially compared to what you just had to put in. So there we go. This is attached. Everything is attached. At this point, we have to adjust the adjuster a little bit, put the drum on, and then finish adjusting the adjuster. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some tension on the shoes. So now the adjuster is pushed tight up against both shoes. We'll put the drum on, pull on the e-brake a few times to situate the shoes, and then we'll adjust. Next, I want to put a thin coating of anti-seize along the whole hub surface, especially on this ring right here, Try to avoid getting it on the lug studs, but basically this is going to prevent rust from building up, and it's going to help the drum not stick on here and seize in the future. And since no rust builds up, the drum will sit nice and even flush up against the hub until it needs to be replaced. You don't need a lot of this, just a little bit will do the trick. Now take your drum, and I put brake parts cleaner on my rag. I'm going to wipe off the braking surface here, because as you can see, it is covered with oil from the factory. That way it doesn't rust, but you can't have that on there, so I cleaned it off, slide it on, and now it's time to start adjusting. Obviously, I don't hear any sort of friction on drum brakes. You want to hear friction at all times, minimal, but still some. So I'm going to pull this back off, give this a couple cranks, and we'll see where we're at. Okay. Oh, never mind. I still hear nothing, so I'm going to keep going. Okay, I hear something, so that's good. What I'm going to do now is put on 2 lug nuts, and then I'll go inside, pull on the parking brake a little bit. That's going to seat the shoes in here, situate them perfectly even, then we'll come back and recheck. You don't need to go crazy tight on these, you just have to make them snug so that it holds the drum perfectly up against the hub. As you can see, it still spins and I hear friction, so technically at this point this is perfectly adjusted, but let's see what happens once I pull on that parking brake. Okay, I pulled it a few times. Yep, looser, I knew it. So let's give it a couple more cranks. And try again. What you're looking for on drum brakes is minimal friction, and with the wheel on, you want it to free spin about 1.5 turns when you turn it with medium force. So you don't want it to just keep spinning, but you don't want it to stop before 1 to 1.5 turns. Otherwise you have them over adjusted and they're just going to drag the whole time and wear them out prematurely. And you're going to also overheat your brakes, which can lead to a bad situation. One other way you can adjust these drum brakes is go in a safe place where you can reverse for quite a bit and just pull on the e-brake continuously. Hold the release button and just pretend like you're trying to ratchet it up, and eventually the adjuster will slowly click on those teeth and adjust the shoes to where their perfect adjustment point is. They won't over adjust that way. It's impossible. The spring has a limit, and the spring pressure is what controls the adjustment. So once you have reached that, that's it. It's not going to go any further. So don't worry about doing it too much. It's just that's how you want to get it close here, and then you adjust inside the car, unless you already got it perfect, in which case, good for you. Now you can put your wheel on and torque it to 80 foot-pounds.